You've just survived the arena. The crowd is screaming your name. Blood drips from your sword. You think the worst is over. But what happens when you walk back through those iron gates is worse than any fight you've ever faced. Because outside the arena, you weren't a hero. You were property. And what they did to you in the darkness, Rome made sure no one would ever speak about. The roar of 80,000 Romans still echoes in your ears. They chanted your name. They threw flowers. They called you a god among men. But you are not a god. You are a slave. And the moment you leave the sand, that illusion shatters like broken pottery under a chariot wheel. The guards don't congratulate you. They grab your arms. They chain your wrists. They march you back down into the stone tunnels beneath the Colosseum, where the torches flicker and the air smells like sweat, blood, and fear. You pass cells, dozens of them, men like you sitting in darkness. Some are crying, some are staring at nothing, some have fresh wounds that will never be treated. This is where gladiators lived, not in palaces, not in luxury, in cages. And this is just the beginning of what Rome did to you. You were bought, sold, traded like cattle. Maybe you were a prisoner of war. Maybe you committed a crime. Maybe you were just born in the wrong place at the wrong time. It doesn't matter. Because now you belong to a lanista, a trainer, an owner, a man who sees you as an investment. He owns your body. He owns your time. He owns your life. And he will use every part of you until there's nothing left. You sleep on stone floors. You eat scraps, barley, beans, the cheapest food that keeps you alive but never satisfied. You train every single day until your muscles scream and your hands bleed. But here's what they don't tell you in the history books. You weren't just trained to fight. You were trained to perform. Because Rome didn't want warriors. They wanted a show. They wanted drama. They wanted you to die in the most entertaining way possible. So they taught you how to fall, how to scream, how to beg for mercy in a way that made the crowd lose their minds. You weren't a soldier. You were an actor in a death play. And the only payment you ever received was staying alive one more day. When the sun sets, the real horror begins. You're locked in your cell. The stone is cold. The air is thick. You can hear the others breathing in the darkness. Some of them whisper prayers to gods who stopped listening a long time ago. But some nights, the guards come. They walk slowly down the corridor, their footsteps echoing like a death sentence. You hear keys jingling. You hear iron scraping against iron. And you pray they don't stop at your door. Because when they do, you're taken. Maybe to a private party for Roman elites. Wealthy men and women who want to see a gladiator up close, who want to touch you, who want to own you in ways that have nothing to do with the arena. You stand there, shirtless, scarred, still bleeding from the day's fight. They circle you like vultures. They laugh. They make bets. They touch your arms, your chest, your face. And you can't say no, because you are not a person. You are entertainment. Sometimes they make you fight again. Smaller, private matches for their amusement. No rules, no referees, just blood and spectacle. Sometimes they make you do worse. And if you refuse, you're beaten, starved, thrown into isolation, or worse, sent back to the arena with no armor, no weapon, just your body against a lion that hasn't eaten in days. So you obey. You smile when they tell you to smile.
You bow when they tell you to bow. You do whatever it takes to survive another night.
Your body is falling apart. Every fight leaves a mark, a cut that doesn't heal, a broken rib that never sets right, a twisted ankle that you have to ignore because if you show weakness, you're dead. There are no doctors for you, no medicine, no rest. If you're lucky, another gladiator wraps your wounds with dirty cloth. If you're not, you just bleed until it stops on its own. Infections are common. You've seen men lose arms, legs, eyes. You've seen them die slowly in their cells, whispering for water that never comes. And the worst part? The owners don't care, because you're replaceable. There are 1,000 more men waiting to take your place. Prisoners, criminals, desperate volunteers who think the arena is their only way out of poverty. They don't see you as human. They see you as a tool. And when a tool breaks, you throw it away and get a new one. So you keep fighting, not because you want to, not because you're brave, but because the alternative is dying in a cell, forgotten, alone, with no one to say your name. They told you there was a way out. Win enough fights, survive long enough, earn your freedom. The rudis, a wooden sword, a symbol of liberation, the ultimate prize. But here's the truth. Almost no one ever got it. Because even if you won fight after fight, even if the crowd loved you, even if the emperor himself smiled at you, your owner didn't have to let you go. And most of them didn't, because you were profitable. You brought in money. You brought in fame. You were too valuable to set free. So they kept you fighting, year after year, until your body gave out, until you were too slow, too weak, too broken. And then they sent you to die. Not in a glorious final battle, not in a fair fight. They sent you against unbeatable odds, against trained killers, against starving animals. They made sure your death was spectacular, because that's all you ever were to them, a show. You always wondered what happened to the bodies, the men who fell in the arena, the ones who didn't get back up. They were dragged off the sand by hooks, metal hooks through their flesh, pulling them like dead animals through a door called the Porta Libitinensis, the gate of death. No ceremony, no respect, no burial. They were thrown into pits, mass graves outside the city, unnamed, unmarked, forgotten. And if you died outside the arena, in your cell, from infection, from exhaustion, from heartbreak, you got the same treatment. No family to mourn you, no stone to mark your existence. You were erased, as if you never lived at all. Rome built an empire on blood, but they didn't want you to see it that way. They wanted you to believe the games were noble, that gladiators were heroes, that dying in the arena was an honor. They wrote poems about your bravery. They made mosaics of your victories. They turned you into legends. But they never told the truth. They never wrote about the cells, the abuse, the slavery, the broken bodies piled in unmarked graves. Because if people knew the truth, they might have stopped watching. And Rome needed the games. They needed the distraction. They needed the blood. So they buried the evidence. They rewrote the story. They made sure future generations would see gladiators as warriors, not victims. And for 2,000 years, it worked. But the truth doesn't stay buried forever. Archaeologists found the graves, hundreds of skeletons, men in their 20s and 30s, bodies covered in healed fractures, cut marks, blunt force trauma, evidence of lives spent fighting, lives spent suffering. They found the cells beneath the arenas, the chains, the cramped spaces where you slept. They found the graffiti you scratched into the walls, messages to gods, prayers for survival, names of loved ones you'd never see again. And they found something else, records, hidden documents, accounts from people who worked in the arenas, trainers, guards, doctors. Testimony of what really happened behind the scenes. The abuse, the exploitation, the complete disregard for human life. And slowly, piece by piece, the truth emerged. You were never a hero. You were a prisoner forced to kill or be killed. You were a slave paraded for the amusement of people who would never see you as equal. You were a body used, broken, and discarded. And when you died, Rome didn't even remember your name. The games weren't about honor. They weren't about glory. They were about power, control, keeping the masses entertained while the empire did whatever it wanted. And you paid the price. Every scar, every sleepless night, every moment of fear. That was the real cost of Roman entertainment. Not gold, not fame, your humanity. So now you know the truth they didn't teach you in school, the truth Hollywood didn't show you in the movies, the truth that was buried beneath the sand of the Colosseum for 2,000 years. But here's the question. If you had been born in ancient Rome, would you have survived the arena? Or would you be another forgotten name in a mass grave while the crowd above cheered for the next fight? Think about it, because history isn't just about what happened. It's about what we choose to remember and what we choose to forget.